When it comes to learning Smash, there's a lot of habits that a lot of newer players kind of fall into a lot easier. I would say that it's kind of a case by case, but I've just seen this from so many players that these are things that I just feel like I have to talk about. The next reason I actually see this a lot, this is very common in a lot of lower skill levels, even in previous games, but it seems like it's a little more prominent in this game. I'm not too sure, but I think it is, and that's always air dodging out of combos. Now in this game, it's really difficult because there are different types of air dodges, and when you're getting comboed, most of the time you just want to get out of the combo. And I guarantee that 9 times out of 10, if you air dodge out of these combos, as soon as you hit the ground, you're going to immediately roll. I've seen this option for the last like 5 years at least of playing, and it's not that it's a bad option to do, but it's the fact that this is the only way that you want to get out of a combo. When you're getting hit, you're telling your opponent, hey, I want nothing to do with you and I only want to run away. You're not trying to escape in a more difficult way to face. Instead, you're trying to use your air dodge and then afterwards use your roll to get away from your opponent, and that can honestly get you into more trouble than if you had simply taken the hit. Using your air dodges like this consecutively just doesn't turn out for the best. It's good if you find out other options to do when you're getting hit, such as jumping away or sometimes attacking, but constantly air dodging out of the combo doesn't help you as much as it feels like it does. Another thing that a lot of people don't truly have is being comfortable with the character you're playing, but more specifically, knowing how to recover with your character. Now, this sounds like a very, very basic piece of advice, and honestly, it is. But when it comes to recovering, there's a lot of different ways that you can recover. One, in this game, you can air dodge from the blast zone to give your character a little more of distance to be traveled before you use your recovery options, or depending when you use your double jump. But the biggest thing, once you're off stage, if you end up failing your recovery or you don't make it back, you're going to die. You're going to lose your stock. And honestly, that's never what you want to do in Smash. You never want to lose your stocks. So you got to understand the ways that your character can recover. While, you know, the very basic one is just double jump and use your up B. A lot of characters can mix in an air dodge again, either from the blast zone to get closer to the ledge, or an air dodge from the ledge, or using like your side specials to make sure that you can like cover distance. There's a lot of different ways to recover for pretty much every character. Just make sure you actually know how to do that. You understand how to be comfortable with your character when your character is not on the stage, because that's almost as important as being comfortable with them when they are on the stage. And this one will kind of touch up on the previous two, and it's always doing the same options. Now, I tell a lot of people, and this has been happening for years, that the first step to improving is having one solid game plan. Just one. Understanding exactly what you want to do, where you want to do it, and how you want to get there. Kind of like, you know what, you're neutral. You're neutral. So once you figure that out, you need to make sure you're not getting figured out by your opponent. Now, if you're on the ledge and you always normal get up into roll, your opponent's gonna catch on. If you always air dodge out of combos, again, your opponent is gonna catch on. If you air dodge and then you roll, your opponent's catching on. You always go very low with your recovery, double jump up B. You always use smash attacks in neutral. You, off of the angel platform, somebody's running at you and you roll inwards. These are habits that your opponent is going to catch on to. And, you know, the easiest type of opponent to beat is the one that you figured out, where if you know what your opponent's going to do, then it's very easy to, you know, it's easy to get the win. So while you have this one solid game plan, you need to be able to understand how to beat that game plan. There's a lot of times where if I'm trying to learn how to do a new tech or something, I will go for it a lot and I'll see how my opponent is dealing with it. Because if my opponent figures that out, then I kind of know like, hey, maybe my opponent figured me out. Now, how do I beat that? Just getting into a little more mind games, but more so making it more difficult for your opponent to figure you out. While you might not face the opponent multiple times, you can always win and dip. You will have to face your opponent in at least 3 stocks majority of the time. And those 3 stocks, it's a lot of information between the 2 players. There's a conversation going on, and when you give information to your opponent, you got to make sure you're also receiving information from them. Make sure to not always do the same options. Try to experiment and see how you can beat the options that your opponent is doing. Because if your opponent's also always doing the same options, whoever adapts from there is going to win first. Probably the biggest thing that I see, though, from players of many skill levels is you're either aggressive or you're defensive, and there's no in between. Now, if you understand how to play aggressive, generally speaking, you're going to be at a disadvantage if your opponent forces you to play defensive. So whether if somebody's out aggroing you, or even if they're not out aggroing you, they just happen to get a hit and now you're on the backside, it can be really difficult for you to understand how to play defensively, how to play when the opponent is the aggressor. And if you're playing incredibly defensive, but your opponent forces you into a situation where you have to be the aggressor, generally, again, it's very difficult for a lot of players to step into different shoes, you know, being able to play at that different play style. And I think this is probably one of the biggest things that you can try to work on. If you can understand how to be aggressive and defensive, it'll probably go a lot farther than you think, as you understand what type of things you're looking for, and you can use that information for when you're playing as the other. So if I'm an aggressive player and I know like, hey, you know, when I'm getting hit and I have to be defensive, I want to, let's say, air dodge out of combos. So how am I going to punish these air dodge out of combos? Or if I put somebody on the ledge and I'm a defensive player and I'm like, usually if somebody's a little too close to the ledge, I like to roll past them. You can take that information that you already gained from knowing how to play both play styles and use that in your own gameplay to kind of like learn, you know? Goes back to what I said about the game being a conversation between the 2 players, the game being a toss of information, and being able to kind of like, you know, conceal that information and use it against your opponent as well. It's a very strong tool to have. Now, some of these things are very basic stuff, but when it boils down to it, sometimes the thing that you need to improve the most is your basics. A lot of people throw around the word fundamentals a lot, and while fundamentals can make or break a lot of play styles, I think the main thing is basics. You can work on these basics in the lab, you can work on these basics against computers. You don't need somebody crazy better than you when it comes to working on your basics. And honestly, a lot of these things are habits as well. Habits can always be changed. You can always make new habits. You can always go back to some old habits. As long as you understand what makes these habits strong and what makes them weak, you're already like moving up. You're already taking the steps needed to improve at the game. And that's such a big thing. It's such a big hit, both to upping your skill level and to just being more knowledgeable. And both of those things will lead to improvement in gameplay almost 100% of the time. I don't know any time that it hasn't. So just keep these things in mind.